about using PollEverywhere, which I understand we'll be using later today as well. So this is a kind of online text-based voting facility. And what we did in economics in November, we being mainly Andy, Guy and I, but with some assistance from other people, CDoTL and elsewhere, was to organise a debate between two members of staff on a particular economic issue, which you can see there. And we used this online text-based voting facility in three ways. So we invited people to vote on this issue prior to the debate taking place, so we got an idea of what people thought before the debate took place. We allowed the texting of questions to speakers both before and during the debate, and this programme gave us the facility to do this. And then we undertook a post-debate poll. So I'll be talking obviously a little bit more detail in a minute or two, but we in this case is myself, Andy Nygaard and Guy, and also Nadja and Steve Goff helped out as well on this. And in fact, the group of people that came together to help us at various stages was actually one of the most rewarding things about this. It was really good the way that people helped us to try and get this working. I felt really positive about that. The debaters, incidentally, were Marina de la Trista and Mark Casson. So why did we do this? Well, we had our review last year, and prior to that we had Pathfinder. And one of the things that came out of Pathfinder was that Part 1 students in particular seemed to want more challenge and more engagement. So the challenge bit we interpreted at least partly in terms of engaging and getting hold of the students, trying to capture their interest in the subject, make them feel part of the department more immediately, make them think about why they were studying the subject that they were. So we were looking for things to do in Part 1 with our students, and we thought of several things, but one of them was to introduce a debate between members of staff to which all Part 1 students would be required to attend, but which also would, to which also many other members of the department and other students would be invited as well. So we wanted to mix together the postgrads, research and staff in one group, but with an emphasis on this being nonetheless, at least initially, a Part 1 debate. In fact, colleagues took the view, or one or two colleagues took the view that it really shouldn't just be a Part 1 focus even, it should be much wider than that. But the starting point was trying to introduce a little bit more engagement for first-year students as they just arrived. So this debate took place within about 6 weeks of their arriving. When we had our Pathfinder session, one of the things that happened was that Claire and Joy did a session on voting technology. They asked us the same thing we wanted to know about. This is one thing that came up. It wasn't Pathfinder. There was this clunky system. I don't know if anybody used it. We were using individual voting boxes. And they did very well. It was quite a good presentation. It all looked quite exciting. But it also looked clunky, and you thought to yourself, I can't actually see this coming off very easily. But nonetheless, this idea of having a voting system and voting within a debate, or live voting within a debate, took hold. And this was really because of what I've written here. We're looking to infuse the students and colleagues, get them to mix, enhance a sense of belonging amongst Part 1 students. But in order to do this, especially with Part 1 students, we wanted a fairly fresh approach to add appeal. Andy had seen texting of questions in a debate situation elsewhere and had thought that this might well be effective. And we contacted our colleagues to ask them about this, and they put us in contact with Guy and Mike Goff. So the technology, we didn't like these zappers, these individual boxes, but PollEverywhere suggested, I can't remember who suggested initially, whether it was Joy or Guy or Mike or whoever, but it wasn't very well developed in its use in the university at that time, I think. So this was a little bit of a first attempt. Was it actually first attempt, Guy? Or had it been used? It was a first attempt to use this, so there was a degree of experimenting and seeing how it all went. And I don't know how extensively it's been used subsequently. Has it been used a great deal? It's
been used at a few events like this and meetings like CELTS lunch, I think.
Yeah, we'll see how it's going to work. We'll see how it works in a few minutes. There were some technical issues. We had to check on the license condition. We had to get an extended license, which now operates in a way that is useful for larger student groups. The size of this student group, incidentally, was around about 100 students. The Part 1 target size, around about 100. A technical matter is checking the hardware where you are. Is that still an issue, Guy? It certainly was then. We need to make sure that everything linked in properly to make this thing work.
I'm still checking the hardware, but it doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. So
okay.
I'm still going to.
But it's worth, if you go down this line, it's certainly worth checking. No doubt you'll be in contact with Guy anyway. It's worth checking where you want to use it, how you want to use it, and will it work. it occurred to me when we were doing this that we should just check the cost of texting. So the way this works is students simply have to text a number, one number for yes they agree, another number for yes they don't, and what I understand now to be absolutely standard activity in this area. But nonetheless, students get anxious about this kind of thing, how much it's going to cost. So they all needed warning, just check what your standard, what your deal tells you it's going to cost you to text. And we were fairly convinced that it was that there wasn't an issue here. Certainly nothing happened to make us think that it had been an issue. We assumed everyone had a mobile, nobody said they didn't. Didn't actually think about any other access issues. None occurred to me and none became obvious, but you might want to think about that if you've got any particular students with access issues in your groups, but we didn't. So we got this license, and Guy, in fact, did everything for us. Whether Guy's willing to do everything for everybody, I don't know. No doubt tell you. So what did we? So he organised checking the room. We came along. He checked the room. We saw what was going on. He set up the pre-poll debate, which involves setting up the text number to which people will text their response. Phone number to which people will text their response. Well, you can see Guy basically did everything. So as I said, pre-debate poll. He organised the process of texting in, and I'll say more about business of texting in a minute. And he fixed the post-debate poll. So it was great. We just left it to him, and nothing at all went wrong, which is marvellous.
What sort of fixing was this exactly?
That is to say, just arranging with the site and to get the software to work. Sorry, I didn't see you asked the question. Yeah, it was. I believe the process is. Yeah, well, I think it's quite simple. I think Guy will tell. I can tell you what I think it was. All what it involved was basically making contact with the website and registering the particular
Sorry, it wasn't manipulating results, no.
As well. But basically, I can't tell you because the answer is simply ask Guy. I think we were a bit anxious at first to make sure that it all worked smoothly. But in fact, it did, and I imagine now it works that much more straightforward. So the fixing is it wasn't. So on the day itself, so we had a pre-vote. On the day itself, we concluded the pre-debate vote. So we gave people a few minutes to vote before the speakers spoke, again by text. So it also got them used to the idea if they hadn't already voted, and they couldn't vote twice because their site recorded their numbers, so they couldn't, unless they picked up another phone, they couldn't vote again. But it got them used to how they were going to have to vote when the session ended if they hadn't already done so. And then we went through the standard sorts of debate processes, and we had a break for 5 or 10 minutes, maybe it was more than that, maybe it was 15 minutes, when people could give them time to text in if they hadn't already done so. But they could text in throughout the debate. And what the arrangement was that Guy managed the process of people's texted questions coming in, and then we flicked them up on the screen as quickly as we could when they were texted to us. So people could see the range of questions that were being asked. There were issues with this, as you'll see, which we haven't entirely resolved. But this was a dynamic environment. But then we had a pause, and many more texts came in. Actually, there was a technical hitch, wasn't there, with actually realising that there'd been something stopping the text coming forward initially. But if that's really running, it becomes a very dynamic process. In fact, the issue is it becomes too dynamic. You get overload. And then the thing concluded, and there was a post-debate vote. So how did it go? Well, I think it was engaging. We did get a reasonable number of votes. We got about 85 votes prior. This wasn't, of course, just Part 1 students. This was... How am I doing, Julian? Sorry, I lost track. Sorry. But it wasn't just Part 1, it was everybody, so postgrads and staff. It was easy to vote. All we did was contact everybody, sent them an instruction. All they had to do was one number for yes, one number for no, and send it. And that was it. And they were told what that process was. They were given several chances to do that. We didn't get many texts before event. The initial live, we had a little bit of a wrinkle with the initial live text feed within the debate. Most texts appeared during the break, and the final vote was exciting. It was exciting because we made it dynamic, so people could see how they were voting, so they could see graphically who was voting for what. That, of course, from a voting perspective, is a very flawed approach, but it made the event more exciting. And that was what mattered, mainly here. So main issues, we didn't have enough text to start with, it made it a bit more difficult for the speakers. Once it came in, we had overload, really, and the speakers couldn't cope with everything that was coming forward, and that led to a certain degree of frustration, I think, amongst some of the students who put a bit of an effort in, and then they felt their story wasn't coming So you need to kind of mix this with a sort of standard from the floor story, which we didn't do. But you absolutely must have somebody like Guy, because you need to moderate stuff. We had about 50 texts during the session, and half of them were not publishable. I really hope this isn't typical of economics students. You will know your students for yourselves. And I'll send you, that's enough of that. That's quite enough of that. Okay. Voting straight, you can check the vote as you went along. So this is what students saw in the post-event vote. They could see these columns moving along. And Andy and Guy or I can check the pre-vote as well. Sorry, I'm up on time. So you can see how it all goes. Well, I've had my time now, so that's it. We didn't really do sufficient follow-up, but we're going to try this again, at which we'll follow it up more tightly. But the overall view is that it did engage the students, but it probably needs more. It needs more follow-up. It needs more thinking about how to run a dynamic debate when you've got text flowing in from people during the event. Thank you.